Hello guys, welcome back. So we are making a lot of progress here and we are ready to register our stake pool as we mentioned before, but just before we register our stake pool, we want to start for the first time our core node with all the certificates and the things that it needs, like the CAS key and the verification and the VRF keys. So it is quite a moment here. Again, you will need to grab this command and customize it because obviously I cannot know your host address or your port in any other information because you could have like changed the name files or something. So please make sure that you copy that into your text file like I have done here, and I have created this customize command with my host address, port, and all the configuration files that we need. So now we are ready to grab this line, come here to our core node, and see the magic begin for the first time in our core node. So let me just make this window a little bit bigger because this is quite a moment here. I want you to notice something once it is synchronizing. Let me come here to my relay node and press P, and at some point my node, my core node, will show up here within the relay nodes that are within the peer list. Okay, so it is important, and as you can see here, it is not showing just yet because it is not synchronized. But once it is synchronized, it should it should appear here. And the other important thing to notice here is just let me okay, there we go. There we goes. So here it is, our block producer node. It is showing among the peers of the relay node. And as you can see, as we mentioned before in the topology file, the core node will only be connected to each relay node. We could have another relay here, and we could probably have like two relays, and that will give us like a little bit more reliability because one of the nodes could somehow drift a little bit, but the idea is that, right, we have our nodes connected to one another, and as you can imagine, the slot number here will be the one that our relay node is showing, because otherwise, because I mean, we are grabbing this information from our relay, right? So we are grabbing the latest slot from our relays. Okay, so this is it. We have started our nodes, and let me just have this nice view for a second. Let me just reduce that a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use my relay at this moment, but let me just have it by my side. And in this terminal, I'm gonna be running a series of commands to actually register our stake pool and all its metadata, which is important here. So just a brief reminder, at this moment we have all these files. So it is quite a remarkable amount of files and keys and stuff. But the interesting part is just a little bit below. The first thing to register our stake pool and its metadata. By its metadata, we are talking about the name, our description, our ticker, and our website, our homepage. And for that, we need to host that information in a JSON file, which follows this structure, this schema. And we need to host it in a domain, in a URL that we control, that we own. In mainnet, that would probably be in your website for your stake pool, right? Where you show information for your potential delegators and all that stuff. But for now, you don't have to create a website for your testnet stake pool, right? You can just simply use a GIST to create that JSON file, as I just did. I named it CLR pool.json, and I am storing it here. And if I could, for example, open it, oops, it's shown here, the raw file. That's the URL that you would share, but we cannot directly share this one because this is like 70 something characters long and we need it to be less than 65. So this is why I used git.io to shorten the URL. So this is the URL that I will be using when I register my certificate. This will redirect to this one, okay? And from here, the blockchain will read my metadata, okay? So for now, just please make sure that you create that file and make sure that the final URL that you have, that you obtain from that, is less than 65 character long. And you will need also to bring your JSON file to your stake pool, to your server here, because you will need to use Cardano CLI again with that file. And let me just show you. I think I put it in pool keys, probably, I'm not sure. Yes, here it is. And let me just show you cat CLR pool JSON. And here is the same file that I am using. Obviously, this is a fake URL. And, well, there is a ticker that I am using. And all the information that we need. And the reason for us to need this file here is that we need to get the hash of this file, okay? And this is done with this command, Cardano CLI Shelly stake pool metadata hash, pool metadata file, and the JSON file that you just created. So I would simply come here. I cannot use just the entire command because obviously this is not the name of my file, but CLR pool.json, and I get the hash of my JSON file with the metadata. Okay, so that is what you get here as an output. And with that, we are ready to generate our stake pool registration certificate. This is a very important certificate because here we will set some very important parameters for our stake pool. So don't take it like very lightly. In particular when you are in mainnet, right? And you need to give it a very well thought to these things here. How much are you going to pledge? Remember that last lesson when we learned about the pledge and why it is important for the security of the network, and you need to make a realistic pledge. Okay, so this is the amount of ADA that you want to delegate, that you commit to delegate to your own stake pool, and you need to make sure that that is an amount that you can actually comply with. You need to honor your pledge. Okay, then you need to set your pool costs. In this case, I am setting it like for 4,321 ADA, just to make a reasonable number, and that will be like 400 and something, 450 US dollars or so. So, but you will just need to make sure that how much is your pool costing to you with all the costs that it has involved, like hosting the services, like the machine, the equipment, your time. How much does it cost for you to make to run this stake pool? Okay, then you need to set up a pool margin. How much will you charge your delegators? That's like the fee that you will charge them. And also, well, you need to set up your relay IP, not your kernel, your relay, because this is going to be shown in the to all other people. So you want to remember, you want to keep your stake pool like protected, but everybody needs to know your relay IP so that other guys in the network can connect to your own relay, so that it can actually be a P2P network. Okay, you have to give us the port where your node is running. In this case, I am running both nodes in port 3000. This is for simplicity this time. So this allows me to just think on less things when I am configuring my topology files. Your metadata URL, as we mentioned before, the metadata hash, as we just got it from the command line interface with the metadata hash subcommand, and the registration certificate is the output file that we are going to create here, and later on we're going to embed it in a transaction so that it is registered in the blockchain. Okay, so let me just come back to my text file. I have just customized my command here, and let me just clear my screen for a second, and there we go. Let me just make a quick look here. I am inside pool key, so these paths will not make sense. Let me just cancel that, and let me just run it from home, just so that the paths that I have set up actually make sense. Okay, so it looks like these paths actually make sense. Let us just check. Okay, so yeah, remember I removed my cold keys from the node, so I will need to move them to here for a second. So let me just grab this command here and copy those cold keys to my server for a second. I will remove them immediately. So here I have the cold keys now. So let me just go back again, clear the screen, and this is it. No news is good news, right? No error messages is good news. So if I do ls, here I have my pool.certificate. And let me just move that to my pool keys directory. Oh, there we go. Cd pool keys plus and where it is pool.cert. So here it is. We are good to go. So now we can continue with the transaction. Okay, before we generate the transaction, we need to generate the delegation certificate. This is our pledge. This is where we honor our pledge, okay? So let's just make sure that we honor that pledge. And actually for this paths to work, we need to be inside pool keys. As you can see, I have moved all my payment addresses and keys and stake keys and addresses to this very folder so that I can have everything together, everything that I need together, and these commands does not have to have very complex paths into it. So I think that right now we are good to generate that certificate. Yes. Again, this certificate involves two of our verification keys, the stake verification key and the cold verification key, and it produces a delegation certificate. And if I do ls again, there it is, my delegation certificate, right? So we are ready to actually, again, draft our transaction so that we can then estimate the transaction fees for that, okay? So let me just copy this one. As you can see here, I have customized this to match our file names, right? But probably you may want to have like a more decent name here, like just payment one or something like that, or whatever name you want to give it. Just you need to be consistent across all your commands and the usage of the files, okay? So let me just grab this one. And as you can see here, we are going to produce a tx.raw file, a raw transaction file, so that we can use that to actually calculate our fees. Oops, we need to make sure that this is actually something that we can run, because Cardano CLI is not a command, it is Cardano CLI. And there's something wrong here. Let me just take a look. Okay, yeah. Okay, absolutely right. So I need to give a proper transaction input here, right? And an indexes in every transaction. I was just being so lazy. But you remember that how to do that. You need to do Cardano CLI Shelly query utxo address cat. I think my payment to address has enough fonts. Let me just come here, ls. Oops, I need to command to connect again. Just let me make sure about the file names. SCD results ls. I think this payment to address have some fonts, but I am not just sure if it has sufficient fonts to pay for the transaction. Let me just make sure about that. But now, to avoid complicating things, let me just use that payment with the stake. Okay, so cat and payment. Let me just grab the file name so that I don't make any mistakes while typing it down. There we go. Cat payment.address, and as always the dash testnet magic space 42. And this one looks good. Okay, the Cardano node socket pad, I have it here. I should put it in my bash profile, my bash.bashrc file, but for now does not exist. Okay, yeah, because again this path doesn't make any sense because this node is not running on relay but in core, and this should be good enough, and there we go. So now this one, let me just come here and open up my running file here, and let me just paste it here, and I can use now my transaction hash here, this UTXO, copy, and it goes here. Transaction index is 0. Output, I'm gonna send the change of this transaction to the same address, payment with a stake. Just make sure that you are using the correct name file. For now, you can leave these amounts in 0 as before with the TTL and fees. And this one should work now. Let me just add the Z that we were missing. And we should be good to go now. And copy and come here, clear my screen again so that I'm not at the bottom. And error reading Shelly certificate at pull registration cert finally does not exist. Okay, the thing here is that I have a different name. I just have pull.cert. So what I can do here is just, actually it makes more sense like the pull.cert to pull registration.cert. I'm just renaming the file here because it makes more sense to have it like pull registration certificate. It gives you more information. Okay, so now for the third, fourth, or fifth time, I don't know, but this one should work now. Okay, so no news, good news, and alas, and this would create a tx.raw file. So if we go back to our tutorial, we should be now ready to calculate our transaction fees. And I think that this time we don't have to actually customize anything. We are just taking tx.raw as an input. This transaction has only one input, one output, testnet magic, the witnesses, and the protocol.json. Just let me make sure that I have protocol.json here. It looks like I don't have that file within those files, but luckily we know how to obtain that. So it is Cardano, CLI, Shelly, query, and the option is protocol parameters, protocol dash parameters, and the output file, which will be protocol.json. Oh, I need the testnet magic, I guess. Yeah. Dash testnet magic 42. And this makes a little bit here. This is looking good, I guess. What I missed, invalid argument, protocol.json. What's the proper usage of this? So it is currency and actual protocol parameters in out file. dash dash out file. Alas, so protocol.json, now it is within our files. Here it is. And now we are just ready to calculate our transaction fees. Copy that from here and run it. It is this amount. So let me just make this a little bit bigger so that we are not just that constrained here. So now, remember, if you cat protocol.json, you can see that here it is pool deposit. When you create a stake pool, you need to make a deposit of 500 ADA. So this is what we need to include in the transaction. And as before, when we registered our stake address, the way to calculate, to make that deposit is from deducting it from the change that we are sending back to our own address. So let me just come here to query my balance. I think it was done here, or did we query the balance? Probably I lost it. But if we did it, I don't remember we did it. I think we did. Let me just check my coin history. Here we go. So now we have this amount, so we can do expression. And this is our starting balance now. We have the fee that we need to pay for this transaction minus the deposit, which is this one, 500 ADA, and this amount is the amount that we need to send back to our own address. Okay, so let me just come back here to my running document, just paste it here, and I need to build the transaction again, but this time with the proper amounts and things for the TTL. Okay, so this is the other important thing that we want to query. We want to query the tip again. I think we have done that before. Just let me check. We have it here in the command history. Probably not. Okay. So let me just shall we query query tip. There we go. So this is the okay. So we can make that to be 7. You can say 6770 will do 1, 2, 3. That will do as a TTL. We know the transaction fee from above. It was this one. Our registration files are good. Let me just, since I'm gonna run this thing from here, I can just make this path a little bit shorter. And yes, and once again, we need this UTXO here to pay for the transaction. And the hash is 0. So it is looking good this time. Let me just copy and paste it here. Just second look. Cardano CLI Shelly transaction build raw. Okay, there's something wrong here. Control C. We need a space. Oh, Control C here. We need to come here and add a space here. Command copy. Command V. Cat payment with a stick address. That makes sense. That makes sense. So we have a new transaction raw file. We are ready to sign that transaction, and make sure that you have all your files here, because this time this transaction is going to be signed, but not only the payment, but the stake and the call signing keys. And let me just grab this one. There is nothing to customize here, I guess. So it makes sense. Yes. So if I do ls again, there is a tx.signed file, and that is the one that we are going to embed into a transaction to make sure that we register our stake pool. Okay. So it is looking good. Let your failure, UTXO failure, fee too small. The fee was too small? Okay. But it is what you told us. So, okay, no worries. Let us just create that again. Let me just make sure. It says that it should be 186,577 the minimum, but when we calculated the transaction fee, it was indeed this amount. So, okay, so transaction has raised a little bit. Perhaps we took so much time, but let me just use this amount here that they are suggesting. But now this expression will not make sense. This one. So we need to recalculate that. So this time will come here, and it will be. It is looking good, I guess. And let me just make sure I am using 985, 985. There we go. So I need to send this one here. TTL should be good, and it is looking good. Hopefully. There. Oh, again. I'm missing the Z. There you go. Then we can come back to our tutorial where we will sign the transaction again. Actually, let's introduce that. And then to submit the transaction. And this time we don't have any errors, so we are good. And there's a way for you to verify that your stake pool registration was indeed successful. And you would use Cardano CLI Shelly stake pool ID with your verification key file, and you would use the cold V key in this final time before we can remove that again from our node. Okay. So let me just use this entire thing here and here and v, and that would be the cold dot v key. So there you go. That is your pool ID. You may want to save that. And let me just save it here with all my important information for my nodes, like here. Pool ID. There you go. Come and save. And so now we are ready to continue to learn how to retire a stake pool. It's sad that we just registered it. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you unregister that, but it is super important that we understand how this process works, and very important that if for whatever reason you stop running your stake pool, you retire that stake pool and just not leave it there, because it will, if there are too many stake pools that are not actually producing blocks or that are not running, the chain density goes down and it is a bad thing for the network. Okay, so whenever you stop running your stake pool for whatever reasons, no questions asked, please retire your stake pool. Okay, so just before we go, we are ready to remove our cold keys from here. Alas. And just for a minute or two, please try to think about your firewall and your firewall configurations to make sure that this node, this core node, only connects to your relay node. And one of the methods that you can have is having your firewall to only accept connections from the IP address of this node. Okay, so it is very strict rule, but that's exactly the kind of rule that you need. Okay, and please just make sure of that, especially when you go to set up your stake pool in mainnet. And I think that this is it for today, guys. See you in the next video where we are going to be retiring our stake pool. Actually, I'm not going to retire it, but we will go through the process of doing it. And there's also an important information here afterwards, which is a lot of fun. And actually, there is a one more lesson to go, or a couple of more lessons to go, and it is about monitoring your node with Prometheus and Grafana. And I promise that you will have a lot of fun, because you are going to create a beautiful dashboard to monitor your node. Those fancy graphics that you have seen on Twitter, you're going to create just one like that. Okay, so see you in the next video.